Welcome. This is James Corbett of the Corbett Report with your eye-opener report for BoilingFrogsPost.com. If the Asia-Pacific region is becoming, in the words of Hillary, we came, we saw, he died, Clinton, the strategic and economic center of gravity of the world, then the South China Sea may just be the strategic center of that strategic center. At first glance, there is nothing particularly remarkable about this area of the Pacific. Stretching from the southern shores of the People's Republic of China and Taiwan in the north, to Malaysia and Indonesia in the south, it covers about 3.5 million square kilometers and contains 3 archipelagos containing over 250 islands, reefs, shoals, atolls, and sandbars, most of them containing no indigenous population, and many of them submerged for part or all of the year. Upon closer inspection, however, the waters comprising the South China Sea are of central importance to the region. It is the second busiest sea lane in the world and contains proven oil reserves of over 7 billion barrels, with an estimated 28 billion barrels total and 266 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. As the sea's importance becomes more and more pronounced, and as the region itself sees its major players asserting themselves more aggressively on the world stage, the area has become a flashpoint for disputes between China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Now, tensions in the area are threatening to spill over into armed confrontation.
China marine surveillance vessels patrol the South China Sea as part of Beijing's bid to advance sovereignty and jurisdiction over the waters, parts of which are claimed by Vietnam, the Philippines, Taiwan, Brunei, and Malaysia. Those competing claims top the agenda of this week's meeting of foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. Following talks with Vietnamese Foreign Minister Phan Binh Minh, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton backed Hanoi's diplomatic approach to the standoff.
The United States greatly appreciates Vietnam's contributions to a collaborative diplomatic resolution of disputes and a reduction of tensions in the South China Sea.
China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Hong Lei has reaffirmed China's sovereignty over the Xisha and Nansha Islands and their adjacent waters.
Vietnam's unilateral action has complicated and escalated the problem and violated the consensus reached by both leaders, as well as the spirit of the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. Vietnam's move is illegal, invalid, and detrimental to peace and stability in the South China Sea.
This growing tension is made possible by an increasingly assertive Chinese Navy, bolstered by a number of technological upgrades in recent years that are increasingly transforming it into a world-class naval power. Founded in 1949 with less than 24 poorly equipped ships, the naval force of the fledgling communist Chinese PLA relied for the first 2 decades of its existence on vessels purchased from the Soviet Union. In the 1970s, the Chinese began designing and building their own surface ships, and currently have assault ships, destroyers, frigates, and nuclear attack submarines in their increasingly sophisticated fleet. China is even set to commission its first aircraft carrier later this year. Purchased from Ukraine and refitted by the Chinese themselves, the ship began sea trials last year and is expected to enter the fleet within the next several months. All of these developments have given rise to a new era of Chinese naval aggression and has even led to China asserting itself more forcefully on the world stage.
In Beijing, China's state-run media ramped up its condemnation of the US over territorial disputes in the South China Sea, with the country's top newspaper going so far as to tell Washington to shut up on the subject. The tirade was in reaction to America's State Department, which on Friday said it was closely monitoring increased tensions in the South China Sea and was concerned over China's setting up of a military garrison for the area. Beijing reacted by summoning the US Embassy's Deputy Chief of Mission, Robert Wang, the next day to express its strong dissatisfaction over the comments. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, meanwhile, released a statement accusing America of taking sides over the issue and intervening to stir up trouble.
Recently, I had a chance to talk to Eric Draitser, the host of the Stop Imperialism podcast and contributor to BoilingFrogsPost.com, about this situation and the position that China, the US, and the other players in the region are taking in this conflict.
Sure. Well, at a very basic level, people need to understand that the South China Sea is perhaps one of the most, if not the most, strategically critical part of the world, really, and particularly for the Chinese. The Chinese see the South China Sea as in their backyard, not necessarily saying that they claim the entire sea to be theirs, but they have long-standing policy, the 9-point line, and the various other. I guess we could say the Chinese map as they see it. But at a broader level, the South China Sea is believed to be the second biggest gas field anywhere in the world, and it is mostly untapped, almost entirely untapped. So the possibilities for resources and wealth alone make it strategically critical. Besides that, a huge percentage of world commercial tanker traffic goes through the South China Sea and through the Straits of Malacca every year. So the Chinese, who are so dependent on exports and their manufacturing getting to markets, they have to be able to control their sea lines of communication. We remember back to 2005, the String of Pearls, as it was called by the U.S. Army War College. They essentially said that the Chinese would do whatever it took to guarantee those lines of communication. So the desire of the Chinese to control the South China Sea is really part of their basic strategy of growing their economic influence. Now, naturally, the United States, through various proxy countries, I wouldn't necessarily say Vietnam is a total proxy country, but they're moving in that direction for the United States. The Philippines, naturally, is a client state of the U.S. These two countries are being used essentially as agents of the U.S. trying to subvert Chinese control or Chinese domination of that region. I'll give a basic analysis in the following way. The Chinese and the U.S. have a major difference of opinion as to how to deal with these territorial disputes. The Chinese want to resolve these on a bilateral basis. So China and Vietnam got a problem. China and Vietnam will sit down and resolve the problem. China and the Philippines, same thing. The U.S. rejects this model. The U.S. prefers to use the ASEAN group as the sort of the platform through which they're going to have conflict resolution, and essentially having China sort of collectively bargaining, if you will, with all of the countries at once. Naturally, the United States wants this because the U.S. can dominate the ASEAN group. The U.S. has a very powerful presence in that group, which it cannot have in bilateral relations. So that is sort of the international relations angle of this.
From this US-China nationalistic struggle for dominance over this prized sea lane, however, a third way is emerging, one that is being pushed by a corporate, multinational power elite. In this third way, disputes will not be settled one by one between disputant countries, but through a regional organization that will have increasing power to arbitrate over the region's disputed waters. The idea comes from the International Crisis Group, a supposedly nonpartisan, non-profit, non-governmental organization that is supposedly committed to preventing and resolving deadly conflict around the globe. In reality, it is a mouthpiece for the same international superclass touted by the likes of David Rothkopf, with funds coming from the Carnegie Corporation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, BP, Chevron, Shell, Morgan Stanley, and an assorted who's who of council members, donors, and advisors. Representing the same oligarchical interests as the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, and other supranational organizations, the International Crisis Group asserts a post-nationalist philosophy of so-called humanitarian intervention and regional governmental frameworks. Unsurprisingly, the Crisis Group's white paper on the South China Sea standoff attempts to resolve the conflict by saying that everyone is to blame, and only a strengthened and reinvigorated ASEAN or similar organization will be able to act as an effective moderator in the dispute. Having failed to reach a consensus on a public communique for the first time in its 45-year history at a ministerial meeting last month, ASEAN is now being seen as too weak and ineffective to arbitrate the region's tensions, and the Crisis Group is advocating the building up of a stronger regional framework to produce joint management of the region's resources. Left unstated in the report is that these ideas are being promoted by the selfsame corporate chieftains and political insiders who have been advocating for the subsumption of national sovereignty in North and South America, Africa, and Europe in the name of regional governments that are bureaucratic in nature, democratically opaque, and open to manipulation and control by the multinational corporations and institutional foundations behind organizations like the Crisis Group. Now, once again, the people of the Asia-Pacific region are left between a rock and a hard place. forced to choose between supporting their national interests in aggressive naval squabbles over uninhabited islands, or to cede their sovereignty to unelected, unaccountable regional governmental institutions, it seems that no matter what they do, the people pay with their lives and their freedom for the wars of conquest and geopolitical games of their so-called leaders. As the tension in the South China Sea continues to rise, it is by no means certain how these disputes will be resolved. However, one thing is certain. In this Asia-Pacific century, the South China Sea will continue to be a key piece of the chessboard for any would-be regional superpower. This video is brought to you by the subscribers of BoilingFrogsPost.com. For more information on this and other topics, please go to BoilingFrogsPost.com. For more information and commentary from James Corbett, please go to CorbettReport.com.